paramedics respond to despondent elderly woman who just witnessed gruesome suicide, we got a call to go out to a scene for an elderly woman with chest pains. Arrive at the house, front door is open. We knock, hear the old woman calling out from the back, "I'm in the back room," in a very monotone and calm voice. My partner and I go to the back of the house looking for this woman, and that's when we smelled it. Nothing prepares you for the smell of rotting corpse. I've smelled it a dozen times, and it never gets any less disturbing. We radio for police and ALS backup as we move through the house. We open the door to the master bedroom, and there is our patient. She is approximately 80. And she is staring at the master bathroom with these cold, dead eyes. She never once looked at us as we approached her and began talking to her. I got to the bedside and got in front of her gaze, and she just looked right through me. I turned around to see what she could possibly be looking at, and there was the source of my smell. A man, about the same age as my patient, is on the floor with very little left of his head still attached to his body. A shotgun lay on the floor next to him, and most of his head was strewn about the walls and bathroom counter. We loaded the woman up in the ambulance, and our police backup pulled up. I don't think that woman blinked once the entire time she was in our care. Totally F-ked me up. Psych tech meets scary 7-year-old. As a tech in psych years ago, there was a 7-year-old kid sent to the floor because the mom didn't know what to do with him. Sadly common thing to happen, even if the kids don't have page issues. Anyway, the mom was shaking and crying, and they had to take the kid into another room. She was genuinely afraid of her own son. She had suspected something was wrong when she kept finding mutilated animals in the backyard, but never heard or saw coyotes or anything around. The neighbor's smaller pets started disappearing. The boy had an obsession with knives, hiding them around the house. Denying anything when the mom confronted him. Then when the two started getting into arguments, he would get really violent and hit her, push her down and kick her, threaten to kill her. On multiple occasions she woke up in the middle of the night with him standing beside her bed, staring her in the face. She put extra locks on her bedroom door to feel safe while Ahe slept. The last straw was when she lifted up his mattress and found 50 knives of all shapes and sizes under there. So she brought him to us. I remember talking to him, treating him like he was just any other kid that came through. He seemed remarkably normal, until you spoke directly to him. He had this way of looking right through you, or maybe like he didn't see you at all while you were speaking. He would respond like a robot. Like he was just saying words because that's what we wanted to hear. And B would always put on this creepy, dead-looking smile. Like all mouth and no eye involvement in the smile. Especially when he would get away with something, like taking another kid's markers and they couldn't figure it out. Still gives me chills laying here thinking about him. I had to get up and close my bedroom door. I believe I met a 7-year-old psychopath. Doctor has frightening experience verifying woman is dead. Verifying death is always sad, but my friend tells the funniest story about how creepy his first verification of death was. This is not meant to disrespect anyone. Black humor is a huge part of doctors' coping strategies. He was on a night shift a few weeks into his first job as a qualified doctor and got a call from a ward to say a lady had passed away, an expected death, hence he hadn't been called about her before, and could he come verify and do the paperwork. It's a busy shift with lots of sick people to see first, so he takes several hours to get there. He goes up and they tell him she's in room 8. The door to room 8 is slightly ajar and the room is dark. Now, she was in a side room, but most patients there were in shared bays of 6 beds, so you get into the habit of not turning lights on. In his nervous haste to make sure it didn't look like he was nervous, he slipped into the room armed only with his little pen torch. The window was slightly open and, he swears, the blind rattled against the sill as he crept towards the bed, the tiny circle of light from his torch picking out the rumpled white hospital blanket, only a very slim rise showing where she lay as she was a tiny old lady. Just skin and bone. Finally, the light plays over her face and he has to bite back a little scream, nearly dropping the torch. For whatever reason, her pose in death is one of a horrified and horrifying snarl. Lips drawn back to bare, likely false, teeth, the whites of her eyes showing in a fixed blind stare, and both hands up close to her face curled into claws, slightly overlong nails shining grimly in the meager torchlight. Now, to verify a death, the doctor has to listen for heart and breath sounds for 2 minutes while feeling for a pulse, check for pupil reactions and check for no response to pain. He flicked the torch dutifully across her glaring eyes, forcing himself to shuffle close enough to touch, first to check for response to pain and then to settle shaking fingers on her throat, so close to those furiously grinning teeth, to feel for a pulse. To get his stethoscope under the collar of her gown under the blankets. He has to lean in even closer, almost nose to nose with her now, unable to draw his gaze away from hers. And he has to stand like that for 2 minutes. The seconds crawling away as he stares into that screaming face. He says there's no way he would have heard heart or breath sounds even if she had been alive. All he could hear was his own racing heart in his ears and, on a loop in his head, please don't let her move, please don't move, oh dear God don't move. Toddlers' x-rays show dental work done, parents/insurance say otherwise. I'm not a doctor, but I am in the healthcare field as a dental hygienist. The creepiest/most confusing thing I've seen is as follows. We had a new patient come in for a cleaning. He was around 3/4, and Mom said he had never been to the dentist before. Not uncommon for what I see on a daily basis, so at first I didn't think anything of it. I did his cleaning, and then went to take his routine x-rays. This is where the SHT got weird. After looking at the x-rays I could see that the child had already had a large amount of dental work done. He had around 6/7 composite, tooth color, fillings. When I sat back down at my chair I asked the parents again if he had ever been to the dentist. They were both adamant that he hadn't, and also said there was no way a relative could have taken him without them knowing. What the FCK? How did this happen? Who took him? Where were the parents? Had they possibly been in jail for a long time and not known he was taken to the dentist by someone else and had work performed? What if this wasn't really their child, and actually some kid they kidnapped? His insurance had no record of him having previous dental work, so that was a dead end too. I think about it often, but know that ultimately, I'll never get an answer. It sucks. Psych staffer has dreadful premonition in dream that comes true. I'm not a doctor, but I'm a nurse. I work with geriatric patients and there was this incident about 3 years ago. Before I explain, let me say that I don't believe in ghosts. Anyway, this one time I was working the night shift and I was super sleepy, so I decided to skip lunch because I wasn't hungry and go to my car and sleep for 30 minutes. I got inside my car, covered myself with my sweater, set the timer on my phone and immediately knocked out. I'm dreaming, but in my dream I'm still awake just sitting there. Someone taps on my car window and I see that it's one of my patients. We'll call her D. Surprised I ask D what the hell she's doing outside and she tells me she is looking for her daughter. I tell her to go back inside and that we will call her daughter in the morning. My patient becomes angry and starts banging on my car window. I kinda freak out and try to reach for the door handle to get out and calm her down, but I quickly realize I can't move. Let me add that I frequently experience sleep paralysis, so even though I am asleep, I realize what is happening. I fight it and try squirming my body in an attempt to wake myself up. I finally manage to wake up and my heart is racing and my forehead is a bit sweaty. I sit there for about a minute, realize it was all a dream and roll the window down to cool myself off. My break is over and I clock back in and see that my supervisor and 2 other nurses are huddled in front of a room. I am still by the station clocking when they see me and call me over. I walk over thinking maybe something was wrong with the ventilator or the patient fell, but my supervisor tells me D died while I was on my lunch break. Since most of our patients are DNR, I was not paged. It took a couple of seconds for the message to register and I freaked out internally. I got goosebumps but didn't mention anything to my supervisor about the dream. I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that, and I mostly likely had that dream because she was the last patient I interacted with before my break, so she was still on my mind and I was mentally going over my patient's charts in my head.